Hello and welcome back to What's the Tea. We want to thank you for joining us again this week for another episode. I'm LaSandra Hutchinson, and as many of you know, at South Suburban Family Shelter, we take every Tuesday to highlight either a staff member or one of our community partners so that you can come behind the scenes of our work here at South Suburban Family Shelter. And today I have Zach K-Post with me, and we're going to give you guys an inside scoop into a very exciting upcoming training that Zach is going to facilitate. So, Zach, thanks for being with me today on What's the Tea. You're my guest.
Well, thanks for having me, of course. And I've got my Chicago Bulls teacup here with me, coffee mug teacup hybrid.
Yeah.
Um,
You got coffee today? Or you got coffee?
I do have coffee today. It is we're recording this on a Monday, so it was a coffee day.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely a coffee day. It's definitely a coffee day. So if you guys are watching, make sure that you go ahead and share this video with your followers online and just go ahead and circulate it to everybody. We're going to get into a great topic today about bystander intervention. So Zach, can you first let the folks know when your webinar is going to be and how they can sign up?
Yeah, definitely. So it will be next Wednesday, which is July 21st, and it will be from 12 to 2 p.m. We're going to do it virtually on Zoom.
Mhm.
So we still definitely have spots available if anyone would like to join in. I'll make sure we post something in the comments so you can just click the link and see the registration. For outside people, it is $25, and you will receive 2 CEUs if you're like a social worker, counselor, psychologist, or you're going for one of the domestic violence certifications. You can receive 2 CEUs for that. And I think that's all the logistics of it. It will be, like I said, it's a 2-hour training, so there will be partially lecture. It will be probably like a third lecture, lots of discussion and some video activities, as well as we're going to do some like live skill building scenarios
Mhm.
and kind of crowdsource answers and try to find the best practices along with um, basically looking at different resources and research to identify the best practices that we can use.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so you guys make sure you check out the chat when we're done so you can click on that link and be a part of this webinar. Um, Zach, this is a great topic, and I think that often people talk about bullying, but they don't break down the bystander and the role of the bystander. I think we probably have all been a bystander at some point in our lives. I think it's safe to say that. So can you talk a little bit about just what is bystander intervention? How do you define that?
Sure. Bystander intervention, just a simple definition, is taking action to change the outcome of a situation where someone is being harmed.
Mm,
Um, and as you had mentioned, everyone will be a bystander at some point because there's so many different situations that you could be a bystander in. You mentioned bullying. That's a perfect example. I remember when I was in high school, my senior year, they had just started a campaign sort of around this topic, and I'm not sure how it developed, but there is that sort of focus on, like, if you're looking at like a bully and the
yeah.
victim, for example, but the bystanders play a huge role, um, because we're always sending signals, even, if someone is being harmed and you're just ignoring the situation, well, that's an action, and people
Mm,
who are being harmed or are harming someone will notice that.
mm,
So bystanders often do not know what to do, or they don't help. But that's not to say that they never do, because we all know situations where someone steps in and they help make that change. But again, it could be domestic violence, like um, we talk so much about on this program. It could be sexual assault. It could be hate crimes. It could even be someone who's just a harm to themselves or others.
Okay. Absolutely. It's so interesting because one of the reasons why I decided to become more heavily involved in domestic violence is because I was in a bystander kind of intervention situation. Yeah. And that really prompted me to like I'd always done some level of like violence prevention work, but it made me investigate domestic violence more deeply, and that was what prompted me to learn about the 40 hour and to take the 40 hour. Yeah, so I had a friend who actually had left a domestic violence situation, and I guess the person left and the abuser came looking for them. And I didn't know what was going on. I just realized like this person was really angry, that the abuser was really angry. So I jumped in the middle of it, like, whoa, whoa, like to make sure nothing happened. Now, this is before I had all this information about domestic violence. Like, knowing what I know now, that may not have been the safest thing for me to do. But at the time, I didn't know anything about it. So I didn't understand exactly how dangerous that could have been. Um, yeah. So can you talk about that? Like, why do people get involved or why do some people not get involved?
Definitely. And that's I'm glad you brought that up because that's a perfect example, and I didn't know you were going to,
Right.
um, because domestic violence, and we'll talk about this in the training, is so unique to bystander intervention for just the reason that you're saying, is
Mm,
that directly intervening is not always the best
yeah.
for the person who's being harmed, because they may not be able to leave their relationship. And sometimes if you are calling that person, the perpetrator, out, it could lead to worse outcomes for the victim. And
Yeah.
of course, this is very much a case by case basis, and specifics really matter, which is why I think it's important to do, specific trainings and
Mm,
take a long time to talk about these things. But back to your question, why do some people intervene and some people don't?
yeah.
That's a great question. A few different answers. One, I think sometimes it just comes down to temperament,
Mhm.
and personal, just kind of how the way people are. I'm
Yeah.
kind of not that confrontational. Um, I would probably avoid conflict rather than going into it. But we all know people who they see something and they just, you know,
So true. Yep.
they'll just go right into it. So there is a little bit of, personality and demeanor and things like that. But there is one big theory called the bystander effect,
Mm,
which more or less says that when more people are there's more bystanders, there's more people around, there's a bigger group, that people are less likely to intervene,
wow.
versus if someone is alone and they see an incident happen, they may be more likely to intervene.
Wow.
So a big question is, why is that? And it's I don't think it's necessarily something that you can definitively prove. It's kind of like a phenomenon that you can observe,
Mhm.
but there's a few different reasons, probably like diffusion of responsibility. If there's so many people, it's like, well, you know, why doesn't the person who was there first do something about it? They know more than I do, and I'm just the fifth person walking by.
Wow.
There's a little bit of that, and there's also the technical term for it is called pluralistic ignorance, which we'll talk about.
Mhm.
Basically, that says someone, they think that the whole group is kind of like in support, or they don't see like the group at large doesn't see the problem,
Yeah.
and the person dramatically underestimates that everyone else is uncomfortable with what's happening and that just no one is intervening.
Wow, that's really interesting. I think about the psychology behind this. What it makes me think about is the George Floyd situation and how this teenager saw what was going on. I think she was 17 at the time and didn't jump in the middle to stop it, obviously, but just took that video, I guess, as a bystander action or intervention, and how that played such a huge role in that situation. And if I remember correctly, I think she did an interview where she just talked about how people were calling her a hero, but she just felt like she was doing the right thing. She was just trying to do whatever seemed like the right thing in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought a bit about the George Floyd situation in terms of bystander intervention, and
Mhm.
that one is super tough. Like,
Mm,
there's not always going to be a perfect thing that a bystander can do.
mhm.
Sometimes there will be, and there's definitely, um, like you made it a good example there. Like sometimes just simply making the video, documenting what's happening, that
Mhm.
can go a long way. Because in that situation specifically, there's armed police officers. You're not gonna just run and try to push them down because then
Exactly.
you're just gonna get arrested. So
Exactly.
obviously that doesn't work. And if I do remember correctly, I remember people were shouting and screaming, which is in that situation that's a perfect action.
Wow. Okay. I think of the fact too that there were other people there, but she was the only person that, as far as I know, that chose like, okay, I'm going to record this playing out. So, it makes me think about the psychology behind that and her, I guess gut instinct to say this should be recorded. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you want to like break it down in terms of like do's and don'ts, like a definite do would be do something. Don't,
Mm,
just try to figure out and yeah, of course, if you kind of see a situation, it seems like it's being handled properly, and you feel like if your involvement is just going to be too many cooks in the kitchen, then yeah, maybe you don't need to do anything. Just confirm. That would be one thing you could do. Just say, "Is everything okay?" The people say, "Yeah, we called an ambulance or something."
yeah.
You double checked.
Yeah. Can you break that down more? Like what are the do's and don'ts and just some tips for how people can be helpful bystanders when we find ourselves in those scenarios.
Yeah, definitely. So let's stay on the do's. So do something.
Mhm.
Ignoring the problem does not make it go away.
Yeah.
Keep yourself safe would be another a huge one.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I think it's worth even just like pausing for a second and just letting that one sit because you're not going to be an effective bystander if you become harmed. Um, and the situation worse.
I mean, that's what I look back on the situation I was in. I'm thinking to myself, like, it was almost like ignorance. Like, I'm just so ignorant to what's going on. I don't understand what's happening. So I'm just, my gut instinct, I'm just going to jump in the middle of this, like, stop, no, no violence. But yeah, I could have been harmed. I was prepared to fight, like, okay, we're just going to have to fight him. Like,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
in my mind. But what if the person was armed? What if, they had a gun? I mean, I didn't know, but I think you're right. Like trying to be prepared, like what can keep this person out of harm and keep me out of harm as well.
Yeah, and with like domestic violence, and this will be separate from the do's and don'ts because it is kind of its own category. Like that's why we have medical advocates, and that's why we have um, people who do outreach and
Yeah.
um, just general advocacy because
Yeah.
sometimes you just need to just discreetly, and that's we'll get into some of the D's after the do's and don'ts. You just need to be very discreet about it. You need to be
Yeah.
very subtle and not really be direct.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good advice.
But I can continue with these do's and don'ts because I only gave you one answer so
Oh,
far.
okay. Break it down. Okay.
Um, keep yourself safe. That's two. Try to stay calm. Um, if you can, your heart rate's going to be racing, I'm sure, but do what you can and listen to the person being harmed. And this goes hand in hand with domestic violence because if the person is saying like, listen, like they're trying to like make it known to you, like
Yeah.
yes, I need help, but not in the way that you're doing it. You have to kind of look for those cues.
Yeah, that's really,
Then, if I can, just give you a couple of don'ts.
yeah, go ahead.
Don't escalate the situation.
Hmm.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
So in this training, we'll talk about de-escalation strategies because there are more than one, and they're not always all going to work. But you might have to assess the situation and figure out which one you want to go with. Um, like if there's a domestic violence situation, it's your friend. that might be a very good opportunity to use the de-escalation strategies, like calming your voices down a little bit, and things like that. Um, don't assume anyone else will help. Don't
Yeah,
assume that the situation's already taken care of,
that's good. Yeah.
and don't feel like you need to be a hero,
Mm,
because it goes back to that first one, which was keep yourself safe.
that's
So,
really good.
yeah, so those are just some basic do's and don'ts, to kind of get us started. I want to kind of give you a teaser of the training without going, without going into all the details.
Yeah. Yeah. For more information, make sure you guys sign up for the training. Next week, in the scenario that I was in, looking back, because hindsight is 2020. I remember my friend ignoring the abuser at first. And I said, I was so confused. Like, do you hear that so and so is talking to you? And my friend was like, don't respond. Just don't say anything as if you don't hear him, hear the person. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't know to think of any cues. This is pre 40 hour for me. So I was just so confused. Like, what is happening right now? But I think that's such good advice. Like, maybe just slowing down and listening and watching the person that's maybe being harmed, and trying to see what are some subtle things that they're doing to try to follow their lead, or get a sense of what might be the best course of action. Yeah, that's
Yeah, and I think you're identifying something that's good for the training, which is generally you might not know what to do. You've never been in this situation before.
yeah,
So we're kind of taking a proactive approach and running through just various scenarios to build up skills that you can use
yeah.
when the situation changes.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
because we'll talk about sort of barriers to intervention, and like a lot, some of them, like I had started talking about, which was like personal barriers. So
Mm-hmm.
like as I'm like reading through all the information and going through the training, I'm kind of thinking like, well, what is like what has kind of stopped me from being a better bystander and a little bit more helpful, and um yeah, just taking the right action generally. And I had to kind of assess situations in the past, and I know I'm sure there's plenty of times where I could have done better.
Yeah, no, I think that we can all relate, especially for me. Well, I think with bullying, you grow up seeing so much bullying. And depending on what kind of environment you're in, some people are laughing, some people are, joining in and making it worse, or cheering, or, I think especially as for that scenario, it's really hard.
It is, because there's that peer influence when it comes to young people and bullying, especially, um, and even just like just a little laugh, or any kind of perception that like, yeah, this is okay and this is good. Um, it's sort it's an encouragement.
Yep. Yep.
So like even in that situation, like sometimes ignoring can be pretty powerful
Mm,
depending on the right situation. I think it's more so especially true with like friends and family. If someone is trying to kind of drag you down with them and get you on their side and on their team, that would be a situation where ignoring might be more useful.
okay.
Um, and of course, it's always with that caveat that generally speaking, you don't want to just ignore problems. But when
Mm,
someone's trying to drag you down like that, and you kind of know them, and you can kind of see the situation for what it is,
yeah.
that might be the time.
Not giving it any energy at all can sometimes like de-escalate it. Yeah. That
Yeah,
makes
absolutely.
that makes sense. Did you have any other do's and don'ts?
I don't have any more do's and don'ts, but I can share some kind of like some staples of the training. If it's just a little bit more of a teaser for everyone, which is sort of like the three, or I actually extended it because there were 3 Ds to bystander intervention, but I kind of added 2 more for
Okay.
our training.
Okay.
So this comes from like the green dot approach, um, which has been used like across all these different college campuses, and they have a really great program for bystander intervention. And one thing that they did was come up with these 3 Ds. So number one would be directly intervening. So we talked about many reasons why you might not want to directly intervene, but sometimes that may just be the best the best thing you can do, and just say something to someone, and um, say something, or um, if someone is being harmed and you can take an action directly,
Mhm.
definitely do that. So direct is one. Delegate, so that is bringing people on board with you. Maybe like there's always like those scenes in movies where like someone's like having a heart attack and the one person's like rip his shirt off and like you hold his
Yeah.
feet, and like so
Right.
it's kind of like delegate.
Yeah.
And we'll of course apply that to more bystander intervention, but that just jumps off my head always.
Yeah. Yeah.
Distract is a very good one. So another one that may be useful in DV is to get off the topic, distract the person, um, create a diversion,
Okay.
direct other people's attention to the situation through distraction.
This is good.
Um, yeah, changing the topic, things like that. And then the two that I sort of added for this training was discreet. So being subtle. This is more for like intimate partner violence.
Mhm.
And we talked about that already, so I'll skip the details for that one. And then finally, de-escalation. And I had mentioned you could uh, calm your voice down a little bit.
Mhm.
You match it to start, and then you gradually bring it down with as the conversation goes down.
Yeah.
And
That's really great. Can you break that one down? I feel like in the scenario I was in, that's what I ended up doing. I told the person that was the abuser in the situation was so um upset. And so what I did, I just looked them in the eye and I said, I understand. I said, I understand. And they were like, but you don't, no, 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 like really. I said, oh no, no, I get it. No, I get it. I get it. As to say, almost like what you're saying, you have some whatever, your points are valid. I see, I get it. Just calm down. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I get you. I understand. And that seemed to calm this person down. Like, okay, you know, to the point where they weren't as angry and riled up and they left. Then they left the place. So is that kind of how you would de-escalate, or can you give an example of what it looks like?
I think that was a great example and a good thing to do. Um, you have to kind of question why people are doing the things in the first place. And usually it's not just because they want to hurt someone. It's usually because it sounds like in this situation, they're upset about something. They feel like they're not being listened to.
Hmm.
They're growing resentful over something.
Hmm.
And just telling someone like, although it's not okay what you're doing, sometimes you can kind of make it seem like like you're on their side a little bit. You're not trying to just make this into to help, of course, the person being harmed. You're not turning this into a black and white situation when you're talking to them. And here's a tip that kind of goes into that, which
Mhm.
is consider your use of words like I, we, and you.
Hmm.
So there you were using I perfectly. You were saying, I understand, I get it, I see where you're coming from. I'm paraphrasing what you said.
Yeah, yeah.
And
That's
then you could also say like we, like, if there's a group, it's like we want this to stop.
That's
Instead of, and maybe sometimes this will be right, but you, if
is
you were saying
more.
you,
Yeah, I think that when we say you, oftentimes in any scenario, any kind of conflictual moment, that usually escalates a person even more. Yeah.
absolutely. And then a few other, we talked about ignoring, toning it down. um, approaching from the side sometimes may help. So we talked about direct. Maybe if you just, and there's good videos for this that I'll be able to show.
Mhm.
But like if you can kind of just consider like two people to your right, maybe like in kind of an argument or something, and it seems like it's getting out of hand, and you kind of just approach from the side and kind of just, oh,
Mm.
excuse me, just a little, just kind of just pop in. You're not saying like I'm taking over the situation.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Oh, this is really interesting, Zach. These are really interesting, like subtle but really useful top like tips and insight, because like we said in the beginning, we're all going to find ourselves, we've already found ourselves or will find ourselves in something. It may not be as extreme, for everyone, but we're all, just if you're living life, you're going to be in a situation. It helps to be prepared for these things. This is great. This is really great information.
Absolutely. Well, I think we've shared enough. I want to hold a little bit back for the training, of course.
Yes. So, can you tell us again the training date, time, and how people can sign up?
Yes. So it will be next Wednesday, which is July 21st, and it will be from 12 to 2 p.m. And it's going to be on Zoom virtually. And we will put a link in the comments below. Um, and we've also made a few posts about it just on our Facebook page. If you want to scroll back that way, you can do that as well. But we'll get that in the comments for everyone. And just click the link and I think you just have to fill out just like 4 things, and that's how you'll register.
Okay, awesome. Any final words you want to leave us with around the training or the topic, or any final thoughts about it?
Well, I'm really excited. I'm excited to get more people, um, get a big conversation kind of going, and generate more ideas that way as well, and kind of go over these skill building scenarios that we've been developing.
Hmm.
And I would just say, um, consider some of the strategies, and play the video back, because I think, um, start with the basics, start with the staples, and then go from there. So
Yeah.
um, there's likely something that we could all, a small step that you could do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is so great. Zach, thank you so much for sharing. Guys, make sure you click on the link in the chat, register for this webinar. It's coming up next week. And be sure to share this video with your family, your friends, your colleagues, your community. And just be sure to join us next week, same time, same place, different tea. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank
Thanks.
you, everyone. Thanks, LaSandra.